Passion Struck by John R. Miles. So sticking with the idea of, reading books that are obviously they're nonfiction, but they're like the idea of, self-improvement, growth books, right? Like Rich Dad Poor Dad would be about, financial improvement, ways to view money differently, ways to start to accumulate wealth. Sticking with that path, I found Passion Struck. This book is not so focused on financial stuff, but it is about mental and behavior shifts that allow you to become, like the word says, passion struck and do the best job that you can do with anything that you believe in. I want to say a huge thanks to the author, John R. Miles. I reached out to him and I asked him for a copy of the book, and he pulled through. He sent me this, and I've been reading this book, just finished it. And I gotta say, I've never read a book like this before. This is the first time that I've ever read a book which is, about behavior shifts, mindset shifts, ways to view yourself differently and ways to change your behavior so that you can go out and accomplish what you necessarily want to do. But, I started reading this book and it was apparent that obviously John R. Miles knew what he was talking about. He has a long, extensive background himself. John R. Miles was in the military. He has then gone from business to business. He's worked at Lowe's. He served as the CIO of Dell for a while. And right now he has his podcast, which is the Passion Struck podcast, which is very widely listened to. I'll link that down below. And obviously going off his name, Passion Struck Podcast, he wrote this book, which is about being passion struck. So the book is divided into 3 parts, which is part 1, which is being mindset shifts. Part 2 is going to be behavior shifts. And part 3 being basically putting those things together and combining them in the psychological process of growth. Throughout the first 2 parts, each chapter within part 1 and part 2 focus on a specific principle that can allow a mindset or behavior shift. Throughout each of these chapters, the structure which he approached it from, I thought was pretty unique because John R. Miles was able to combine personal stories of his, stories of people that he's interviewed on his podcast, and then famous people stories such as The Rock, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, etc., etc. All the people that, people know today as passion-struck people or passion-struck leaders. What I also found really cool was that how at the end of each chapter, he doesn't just give, a bunch of different stuff. It's really broad. He gives you specific ideas to go off of based off what you read. So for example, with chapter 6, which is about harnessing the power of perspective, at the end of each chapter, right, he'll give these chapter exercises in which he gives you specific things to do that you can then specifically implement these principles into your everyday life. So with the idea of harnessing the power of perspective, he talks about one of the chapter exercises being reflective journalism and using the idea of reflective journalism with your own life to look at the idea of perspective of what you're doing and what other people are doing. Another cool thing is that with each chapter exercise, it also gave a QR code for you to scan, in which you can scan that and it takes you to additional resources and additional places where you can learn more about the principles that you just read about. One thing that I really liked about this book were the amount of really good quotes that were in it. I mean, and obviously it's a collection of different famous quotes, sayings, stuff that Mr. Miles directly wrote, quotes of other famous people that he talked about, but there were a couple that I really liked. There's one on page 45, which is a Zen proverb, and it says, "Knowledge is learning something new every day. Wisdom is letting go of something every day." Another quote that I thought was pretty great was he said that the CFO of Dell had told this to him directly when he was the CIO of Dell, in which the CFO of Dell told him, "Sometimes being right means being alone." This was chapter 10 in the novel, right, and which says being right means being alone. And I think it touches on a specific aspect of passion-struck people that people tend to gloss over. I mean, people forget that when people start companies, when people are acting, when people are doing whatever they do, right? All it takes is one person to believe in them, and that has to be yourself. I really liked how this chapter talked about the idea of sometimes being right in your own sense, right? Being passionate about something can lead you on a track of you have to be alone for a little bit, right? You have to prove to people that whatever it is that you believe in, it works, and you can't rely on other people always agreeing with you. You have to be comfortable. You have to be willing to be alone. And then part 3 of this novel is basically about, pulling the 12 principles that he talks about, the mindset and behavioral shifts, and basically pulling them together to actually start your process of growth. This book is, the culmination of Mr. Miles' career and his podcast and all the lessons that he's learned, all characterized into 12 really good principles and a very well-written, concise book. Overall, I am so happy I read this. I think Mr. Miles' reputation itself And, you know, the work that he does with the Passion Struck podcast gives him such a great base to write this book. I'm 100% going to see if I can, you know, try and get him onto the channel for an interview, because this book has so many great concepts, and, you know, hopefully we can have a discussion with him and talk about some more of them. Ultimately, really glad I read this book. I am really enjoying, you know, reading these different types of books which are about, you know, real life stuff like financial improvement, mental improvement. So I think I'm gonna try and stick with this. Overall, I would really recommend anybody who is trying to, you know, find ways to essentially work differently. I think that Passion Struck is a great book to do that. Before I end the video, I want to shout out Friends of Kids with Cancer. They are a great local nonprofit in my area who help families of children and children who are dealing with cancer. 50% of all revenue and proceeds that I make off this channel always go to Friends of Kids with Cancer. I will put the link below and the website. Thank you for watching. Check out Passion Struck, and I will see you guys in the next one.